When it gets hot out, current is where I like to be. Well, current is much more complex than we often give it credit for, and as bass anglers, we tend to focus on one or two key spots, and we are really leaving a lot of bass out there that we're not even getting to. Now, a very popular approach is to find some sort of current break, whether it's a rock or a tree or even a ball of vegetation, and we will go ahead and hit the side of that current break and the downside of that current break. A lot of times when we are catching those bass on that downstream side, that is fish that are in more of a loafing or a resting type of position. The first place that I always like to hit is on the front side of a current break, especially if it has some size to it. As that water washes into a rock or a wing dam or a laydown that is out there in the current, it often creates a little bit of an eddy pool or slack water right there in front of it, and bass can get up into that little slack water area, and the fish that are on the front side of these current breaks are often the fish that are in a more aggressive feeding mode. So they will sit there for a while, feed up, then slip to the downstream side of it and rest. So always hit that upstream side. I can't even tell you how many times I've been fishing wing dams and we catch the good aggressive fish on the upstream side of it before our lures even get to the current break. Now this next one has really taken me a lot of years to start to figure out. Often when we come into an area that looks good, we're going down the river and we're like, wow, that looks like a great current break there. We'll bring the boat right up, boom, park right there behind it and start to fish around it. Well, current seams are so very complex, and current seams are something that we really need to pay attention to. Oftentimes, let's say I've got some sort of large current break, there might be a spot 20, 30, or 40 yards or more downstream of it where you've got this eddy water pool, this slack water pool, as well as the main current coming by, and you've got several different seams of varying speeds. Bass oftentimes will like to position themselves right on that seam or usually on that slack water side, but work all the areas. And there are times where you can just find a pile of fish sitting down here, and as anglers we often go right by them and get to the more obvious looking spot. But don't forget to go ahead and check those current seams behind the breaks. Walleye anglers are really good at figuring this out. And the third thing that we have to consider as bass anglers when it comes to fishing current, we spend a large portion of our time fishing that top piece of the water column when it comes to fishing current. A lot of times we do that because those are the lures that are easier to bring over and around these types of current breaks without getting hung up. But depending on the water clarity, especially if it's over, let's say 3 or 4 feet that you can see that visibility, those fish could be down there a ways, and we need to probe the bottom or lower in the water column as well on these current breaks. One thing that I really look for is if I can find a laydown that is sitting at a pretty aggressive angle shooting down into the water and the current is washing up against it, that is an ideal spot, because once again the bass can find a very comfortable spot, whether it's temperature or whether it's the amount of current coming through. They can go up and down that break very easily without covering much distance horizontally. So if you see one of these trees that is really jutting down into the water and has some depth, make sure you probe the bottom side of that as well. I've had tremendous days where I find piles of fish in areas just like this. Now, what about lures that I like to use for fishing these current breaks and these seams? Well, if I'm going to stay up near the top and come up over a wing dam, over a rock, over a laydown, of course I love to use things, top waters are great. Small square bill crankbaits, a swim jig is an all-time favorite of mine as well, and small spinner baits. But probably my number one lure for probing deeper is I really catch a ton of fish on a weighted wacky rig. Now, depending on the type of current break, if you have just rock, an exposed hook, you're probably going to be okay. But if you need to get one with a little weed guard in it, that's absolutely fine. But adding the additional weight, and I just often use insert tube heads, that's all I do, I keep it simple. That added weight lets that wacky rig drop down in that current at just the perfect pace or the perfect rate, and it's easy to adjust. Less weight, more weight. Man, a weighted wacky rig in current to probe those bottom parts of the water column is just a very effective rig. And if you have a bunch of lakes, okay, so you're not river fishing so much and you want to watch a video about a very high percentage structure for hot water fishing or summer fishing, go ahead and check this one out right here, and make sure you go out and encourage someone today. You never know how you might just change their life. For the Bass Fishing Life, I'm your host, Steve Rogers.